Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Terran Resolve, watching the battle unfold through the main view screen. The peaceful blue world of Zelix Prime hung below them like a jewel against the black void of space. Around her flagship, dozens of ships from the Galactic Council fleet moved in perfect formation. Human vessels flew alongside Veltarian cruisers, Korthak destroyers, and sleek Meridian fighters. Enemy fleet bearing 27 Mark IV, reported Lieutenant Torres from the tactical station. 18 heavy cruisers, unknown design. Sarah nodded. The attackers had appeared without warning 3 hours ago, refusing all attempts at communication. Their ships were dark and angular, like pieces of broken metal floating in space. They had immediately begun bombarding the Zelix colonies on the surface. "All ships, this is Captain Chen," she spoke into her comm unit. "Form up on the Resolve. We protect the innocent today." The response came from dozens of voices across different species. Commander Velkar of the Veltarian heavy cruiser Strength of Worlds replied first. "Ready to follow your lead, Captain Chen. The Zelix people will not fall while we draw breath." Captain Thektar of the Korthak destroyer pack confirmed his position. "Our weapons are charged and ready. These attackers will regret threatening peaceful worlds." Sarah felt pride swell in her chest. This was what the Galactic Council represented, at its best. Different species working together to protect those who could not protect themselves. Humanity had been part of this alliance for 300 years now. They had earned their place through courage, skill, and sacrifice. "Begin the attack," Sarah ordered. The combined fleet moved forward like a spear thrust. Human fighters darted between the larger ships, their pilots weaving through enemy fire with skill that impressed their alien allies. The Terran Resolve led the charge, her heavy plasma cannons lighting up the darkness. The enemy ships fought back hard. Their weapons were powerful but crude. They relied on brute force rather than strategy. Sarah watched her tactical display as the battle developed. The Council fleet was winning. The attackers were falling back, their formation breaking apart. "Their command ship is pulling back," Torres reported. "I think we have them." Sarah allowed. Herself, a small smile. Another victory for peace and justice. Another world saved from destruction. She thought about the Zelix families on the surface below, probably watching the battle in the sky and hoping their protectors would succeed. "Captain," the communications officer called out, "I'm getting strange readings from the Allied ships. Their power signatures are changing." Sarah frowned. What kind of changes? Before the officer could answer, the tactical display exploded with new warning signals. Sarah stared in shock as red warning icons appeared next to every non-human ship in the fleet. "Captain!" Torres shouted. "The Allied ships are turning their weapons on us!" The universe seemed to stop. Sarah watched in horror as the Veltarian cruiser Strength of Worlds, which had been flying beside them moments before, rotated to bring its main guns to bear on the Terran Resolve. All around them, their allies were doing the same thing. Evasive. "Maneuvers!" Sarah ordered, but it was too late. The first salvo from the Veltarian ship struck their port side. The Resolve shuddered under the impact. Alarms screamed across the bridge as damage reports flooded in. More hits followed as every Allied ship opened fire on the human vessels. "What's happening?" someone shouted, but Sarah already knew. This was planned. This was coordinated. This was betrayal on a scale she could barely comprehend. The human ships fought back, but they were outnumbered 4-1. Worse, their attackers knew every detail of human ship design, every weakness, every blind spot. They had studied alongside humans for centuries. They knew exactly where to hit. Sarah watched the destroyer New York break apart under concentrated fire from 3 Korthak ships. The carrier Beijing tried to launch fighters, but Meridian interceptors cut them down before they could clear the launch bays. One by one, the human ships died. "Hull breach on Deck 7, Torres reported. We're losing atmosphere. The Resolve shook again as another barrage struck home. Through the smoke and sparks on the bridge, Sarah saw her crew fighting to keep the ship alive. These were good people, brave people. They deserved better than this. "Incoming transmission," the communications officer called out. "Put it through," Sarah ordered. The main screen flickered and changed. Instead of the battle outside, it now showed the familiar face of High Counselor Veltar. The old Veltarian looked exactly as Sarah remembered from their last meeting just 2 months ago, but now his large eyes held no warmth, no friendship. "Captain Chen," Veltar spoke in his calm, measured voice, "I regret that it has come to this." "Veltar," Sarah gasped, fighting to stay upright as another explosion rocked the ship. "Why? We trusted you. We bled for you. We died for your people." The High Counselor's expression never changed. "That is precisely the problem, Captain. Humanity has grown too powerful, too influential. Your species spreads across the galaxy like a virus, making other races dependent on your protection, your guidance, your approval." Sarah felt sick. "We've only tried to help." "Yes," Veltar agreed. "And that makes you more dangerous than any conqueror. The Council has voted unanimously. Your species represents a threat to galactic stability. You must be eliminated before you become our masters without ever declaring war." The transmission cut off. Sarah stared at the blank screen for a moment, then turned to her crew. They looked back at her with faces full of shock and betrayal. These men and women had dedicated their lives to protecting the galaxy. They had left Earth to fight for people they had never met, to die for causes that were not their own. "Captain, we're losing main power," Torres reported. "Life support is failing." Sarah nodded slowly. Around them, the last few human ships were dying. She could see the carrier Normandy burning as it drifted helplessly. The cruiser Moscow was breaking apart, its crew spacing as the hull split open. "Open a channel to Earth," Sarah ordered. "All frequencies, maximum power." The communications officer worked frantically at his station. "Channel open, Captain." Sarah took a deep breath. She thought about Earth, hanging in space around Seoul like a blue-green marble. She thought about the children playing in parks, the families sitting down to dinner, the people who trusted their fleet to keep them safe. They needed to know. They needed to be warned. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran Resolve," she spoke into the comm system. "Earth Command, if you can hear this, listen carefully. The Galactic Council has turned against us. Every species, every ship, every ally we thought we had. They planned this together. They studied us, learned our weaknesses, and then struck without warning." The ship groaned around her as more systems failed. Through the view screen, she could see Veltarian fighters moving in for the final attack. "They say we've grown too. Powerful," Sarah continued. "They say we're a threat to their stability, but I think they're afraid that we showed them what they could be if they just tried to be better." Sparks flew from control panels as the Resolve took another hit. Sarah gripped the captain's chair to stay standing. "Earth, if you receive this message, remember one thing. They turned our own allies against us. Trust no one. Remember us." The final barrage from the Veltarian ships struck the Resolve's bridge. As the view screen exploded and darkness closed in around her, Sarah Chen's last thought was of home. Somewhere among the stars, Earth was still spinning peacefully in space, unaware that humanity's golden age had just ended in fire and betrayal. The Terran Resolve died with all hands. Around her, the last human ships followed her into darkness. The battle was over. The enemy attackers, their purpose fulfilled, jumped to hyperspace and vanished. In the space where humanity's fleet had fought and died, only wreckage remained. The Galactic Council ships reformed their positions and began scanning for survivors. They found none. As far as the galaxy knew, this had been a tragic battle against unknown attackers. The human ships had fought bravely but been overwhelmed. High Counselor Veltar stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking out at the debris field. Soon the story would spread across the galaxy. Pirates had attacked the peaceful Zelix system. The brave human fleet had responded, but they had been outnumbered and outgunned. It was a terrible loss for the Council, but it was a necessary one. Humanity would be mourned as heroes. No one would ever know they had been murdered by their friends. Admiral Marcus Torres sat in the command center deep beneath Geneva, staring at the message that had just arrived from the edge of the solar system. Captain Chen's final transmission played again on the main screen, her voice cutting through. Static and interference. "They turned our own allies against us. Trust no one. Remember us." The transmission ended, leaving silence in the underground bunker. Around Torres, the senior officers of Earth Defense Command sat in stunned quiet. Some faces showed disbelief. Others showed the beginning of terrible understanding. "Sir," Colonel Martinez spoke carefully, "we have 17 diplomatic convoys approaching the system. They're requesting permission to land for the Grand Unity celebration." Torres felt his blood turn cold. The Grand Unity celebration was supposed to be a festival of peace, marking 300 years of human membership in the Galactic Council. Ships from every major species were coming to Earth to celebrate humanity's contributions to galactic civilization. But Captain Chen's warning changed everything. "How long until they reach Earth?" Torres asked. 6 hours for the first convoy," Martinez replied. "The others will arrive over the next 2 days." Torres stood up slowly. Through his mind ran the names of the approaching fleets: Veltarian battleships, Korthak destroyers, Meridian stealth fighters, Zelix heavy cruisers. Every species humanity had ever helped, ever saved, ever called friend. "General Morrison," Torres called to his intelligence chief, "I want full scans of every approaching ship. Look for anything unusual, any weapons that shouldn't be there, any power signatures that don't match what they've declared." Morrison nodded and began working at his console. After several minutes, he looked up with a pale face. "Sir, they're all armed, heavily armed. The Veltarian diplomatic ship is carrying enough firepower to level a continent." "All of them?" "Every single convoy, sir. They have enough weapons to destroy every city on Earth." Torres closed his eyes. 3 centuries of alliance, of friendship, of shared sacrifice. All of it had been a lie. The galaxy had been waiting for this moment, planning for it, preparing to wipe humanity from existence. "Send a priority alert to all defense stations," Torres ordered. "Code Black. This is not a drill." Across the solar system, human military bases came alive. On Mars, Commander James Park read the alert with growing anger. His Red Planet facilities controlled the outer system defenses, including the massive orbital weapons platforms that guarded the space lanes. "Sir," his aide reported, "I'm reading massive hyperspace signatures throughout the system. It's not just Earth. They're hitting every human colony simultaneously." Park pulled up the tactical display. Red icons appeared around Mars, Europa, Titan, and the asteroid mining stations. The approaching fleets were perfectly coordinated, arriving at exactly the same time to strike every human population center at once. "They've been planning this for years," Park muttered. "Maybe decades." On Earth, Dr. Elena Vasquez was evacuating the research facility in Antarctica when the IEU alarms began. She had been working on deep space colony projects, theoretical studies about establishing human settlements beyond the galactic rim. Now, those theoretical studies might be humanity's only hope. "Doctor," her assistant called out, "we're getting reports of alien fleets throughout the system. Command says this is an invasion." Vasquez looked at the research data they were loading onto emergency shuttles. Hidden in those files were the locations of several automated supply bases placed far beyond the galaxy's edge as part of a secret contingency plan. Only a few people knew about Project Exodus, the plan to evacuate human civilization if the worst ever happened. She had never imagined they would need it. The attack began at exactly 1400 hours Earth time. Across the solar system, diplomatic ships suddenly dropped their peaceful masks and revealed their true nature. Weapons ports opened, shield generators activated, and the galaxy's finest warships began methodically destroying everything humanity had built. Above Earth, the Veltarian flagship opened fire on the orbital defense platforms. The ancient stations, built during humanity's early expansion, crumbled under weapons designed to crack planets. The Korthak destroyers swept through the satellite networks, cutting Earth off from communication with the outer colonies. Admiral Torres watched the destruction from his command bunker. Reports flooded in from around the planet. New York was burning. London was gone. Tokyo had vanished in a flash of alien plasma fire. Billions of people were dying while ships that had been welcomed as friends revealed themselves as executioners. "Sir," Morrison called out, "I'm getting a transmission from the Veltarian flagship. Put it through." High Counselor Veltar appeared on the screen, looking exactly as calm and reasonable as he had in 1,000 diplomatic meetings. Behind him, the lights of his bridge crew cast strange shadows on his alien features. "Admiral Torres," Veltar spoke in his measured voice, "I regret the necessity of this action, but the Galactic Council has made its decision. Humanity has become too influential, too powerful. Your species represents a threat to the natural order of the galaxy." Torres stared at the alien who had eaten dinner at his home, who had met his children, who had been welcomed as a friend and ally. "We trusted you." "Yes," Veltar agreed. "And that trust is precisely why you had to be eliminated. You made yourselves indispensable. You solved problems other species could not solve. You mediated conflicts we could not resolve. You became the leaders of a council that was never supposed to have leaders. So you decided to murder us all." Veltar's expression never changed. "We decided to preserve galactic stability. Your species will be remembered as heroes who died defending the innocent. The truth of this day will never be known." The transmission ended. Torres turned to look at his staff, seeing his own feelings, reflected in their faces: betrayal, rage, and beneath it all, a cold determination to make their enemies pay. But first, they had to survive. "Order all remaining ships to evacuation stations," Torres commanded. "Execute Project Exodus. Get as many people off the planet as possible." The next 72 hours were hell. Human defenders fought with desperate courage, knowing they were protecting their families, their children, their entire species. But they were outnumbered 50-1 by enemies who knew every detail of human military doctrine. Commander Park held Mars for 36 hours before the Korthak fleet overwhelmed his defenses. As his command center burned around him, he transmitted the activation codes for the hidden supply bases to any human ship that could receive them. Dr. Vasquez managed to evacuate nearly 2 million people before the Antarctic facility was discovered and destroyed. Her ships, loaded with refugees and vital technology, jumped to hyperspace just minutes before alien fighters arrived to finish the job. Admiral Torres made his last stand in orbit above Earth. As the enemy fleets closed in for the final assault, he prepared to activate the planet's self-destruct system. Better to deny the aliens their prize than let them claim humanity's homeworld. But then Dr. Vasquez's voice crackled through the comm system. "Admiral, this is Exodus Control. We have 2 million souls aboard our ships and we're jumping to the hidden bases. The infrastructure is secure. The knowledge is preserved." Torres looked at the tactical display. Earth was doomed, but humanity itself might survive. He thought about the hidden bases scattered in dark space between galaxies, the automated systems that had been building supplies and equipment for decades, waiting for a day like this. All ships, this is Admiral Torres, he broadcast to the fleeing evacuation fleet. Jump to the Exodus coordinates. Take our people to safety. Remember what they did to us here. Remember the faces of our friends when they revealed themselves as murderers. As the last human ships vanished into hyperspace, Torres activated Earth's final defense. Nuclear fire consumed the planet's surface, ensuring that nothing would remain for the aliens to claim. If they wanted Earth, they could have its ashes. The aliens watched the planet burn from a safe distance. When the fires finally died, all that remained was a blackened rock floating in space. They had achieved their goal. Humanity was extinct, their threat to galactic stability eliminated forever. High Counselor Veltar stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking down at the ruins of Earth. His aide approached with a report. All human settlements have been destroyed, the aide reported. No survivors detected anywhere in the system. The species is extinct. Veltar nodded slowly. Send word to the Council. The galaxy is safe. Begin the memorial preparations. We will honor humanity's sacrifice in defending the innocent. But far beyond the galaxy's edge, in the cold darkness between star clusters, human ships were arriving at hidden bases. The refugees looked back toward the distant glow of the Milky Way, knowing they could never return home. They had lost everything, but they had survived, and survival was the first step toward revenge. General James Park stood on the observation deck of New Horizons Station, looking out at the vast industrial complex that humanity had built in the darkness between galaxies. 25 years had passed since the betrayal. 25 years since they had fled their burning homeworld with nothing but rage and determination. Now the emptiness around them hummed with purpose. Massive shipyards stretched for hundreds of kilometers, their construction arms working constantly to build the fleet that would carry humanity back to the stars. Automated factories processed raw materials harvested from dark matter asteroids. Research stations developed weapons and technologies that the galaxy had never seen. The latest production report, sir. Colonel Sarah Martinez handed him a data pad. She had been just a lieutenant when they fled Earth. Now she commanded New Horizons military operations, her face bearing the hard lines that marked all the survivors. Park reviewed the numbers. 5,000 warships completed this year. Alone. New weapon systems coming online every month. Most importantly, the stealth technology was finally ready. Ships that could move through space undetected, invisible to every scanning system the Galactic Council possessed. Dr. Vasquez wants to see you, Martinez reported. She says the final phase is ready to begin. Park nodded and made his way through the station's corridors. The walls were decorated with images from old Earth, reminders of what they had lost. But more prominent were the memorial walls, covered with the names of everyone who had died in the betrayal. Billions of humans, murdered by their supposed friends. He found Dr. Vasquez in the genetics laboratory, working with a team of scientists over complex biological displays. She was old now, her hair white and her face lined with years of hard work. But her eyes still burned with the same cold fire that had driven humanity's survival. James, she greeted him without looking up from her work. We're ready for the reconnaissance mission. I want you to see what we've learned. She activated a holographic display showing the Milky Way galaxy. Red markers indicated the locations of major Galactic Council worlds. Yellow markers showed areas of conflict. Without humanity keeping the peace, Vasquez explained, the galaxy has been tearing itself apart. The Veltarians and Korthax went to war 15 years ago over mining rights. The Meridians have been raiding civilian transports. 3 minor species have gone extinct from conflicts that we could have mediated. Park studied the display. They destroyed us to preserve stability, and then threw that stability away. It gets better, Vasquez continued. Our scouts have confirmed that every major world maintains monuments to the Great Liberation. That's what they call our genocide. They celebrate it as a holiday. Park felt his hands clench into fists. Show me. The display changed to show images captured by human stealth probes. Massive statues on Veltari Prime depicted heroic alien warriors standing over broken human ships. On Korthak, children learned songs about the brave day when the dangerous humans were stopped forever. The Zeliks, the very people humanity had died trying to protect, had built an entire museum dedicated to their liberation from human influence. They don't just think they were right, Park said quietly. They're proud of what they did. Very proud, Vasquez agreed. But here's what's interesting. The younger generation of aliens has never known a galaxy with humans in it. They don't understand what we brought to the Council: peace, stability, innovation, protection for the weak. Without us, they're reverting to old patterns of violence and conquest. Park walked closer to the display. What about their military capabilities? Declining rapidly. They've been fighting each other for 2 decades using the same old technologies. No innovation, no advancement. They've stagnated while we've been growing stronger. Vasquez activated another section of the display. But this is the most important part. Our deep space probes have identified the current location of High Counselor Veltar. A new image appeared showing a luxurious space station orbiting a peaceful garden world. The station was massive, clearly designed to house the galaxy's most important leaders. He's retired to the Paradise Sector, Vasquez continued, living in comfort on a station built with resources that should have been used to help struggling worlds. He spends his days writing memoirs about his great service to galactic peace. Park stared at the image of the alien who had ordered humanity's extinction. Veltar looked older now, but he was clearly living well. No doubt his memoirs would paint him as a hero, the wise leader who saved the galaxy from the human threat. How long until our fleet is ready? Park asked. 2 years for full deployment, Vasquez replied. But we could begin smaller operations now, test our new capabilities, gather intelligence, begin the psychological campaign. Park nodded slowly. The plan they had developed over 25 years was complex and thorough. They would not simply attack the galaxy with brute force. They would use fear, confusion, and terror to break their enemy's will before the real war began. There's something else, Vasquez said. She led him to another section of the laboratory where a group of young humans was training with advanced combat systems. The children who were born here, who grew up in exile, they're not like us, James. Park watched the young warriors practice. They moved with deadly precision, their faces cold and focused. These were humans who had never known peace, never experienced trust or friendship with aliens. They had been raised on stories of betrayal and taught from childhood that mercy was weakness. They're harder than we ever were, Park observed. Much harder, Vasquez agreed. They don't want to rebuild the old galaxy. They want to rule it. The question is whether we can control them when the time comes. One of the young warriors, a woman named Lisa Park, approached them. She was the general's daughter, born during the long journey to dark space. Her eyes held no warmth, no hint of the compassion that had once defined humanity. Father, she said formally, the stealth squadron is ready for the reconnaissance mission. When do we return to the galaxy? Park looked at his daughter and saw the future of humanity reflected in her face. These young people would be the ones to carry out their revenge. They would be the instrument of the galaxy's punishment. Soon, he told her, very soon. Later that evening, Park stood alone in his quarters, looking at images from old Earth. His walls displayed scenes of human cities, human families, human children playing in parks that no longer existed. All of it was gone, destroyed by aliens, who had smiled and called themselves friends. But humanity was not gone. They had survived in the darkness, grown stronger, become something new and terrible. The galaxy thought them extinct, but they were about to learn how wrong they were. A communication alert chimed. Park activated the display to see the face of Admiral Chen, Captain Sarah Chen's daughter. She commanded the stealth reconnaissance fleet that would make first contact with the galaxy after 25 years of exile. "General," Admiral Chen reported, "the scout fleet is ready to jump. We'll begin with small probes, testing their defenses and gathering current intelligence. The aliens won't even know we're there." "Good," Park replied. "Remember, this is just the beginning. We need to understand what the galaxy has become before we decide how to reshape it." "Understood, sir. What are our rules of engagement if we're discovered?" Park considered the question. The old humanity would have avoided unnecessary casualties, would have tried to minimize damage to civilian populations. But the old humanity was dead, murdered by their friends in the cold vacuum of space. "No survivors," he said finally. "Anyone who sees us must die. We are ghosts until we choose to become real." Admiral Chen nodded. "Yes, sir. We'll be ghosts." The transmission ended, leaving Park alone with his memories and his plans. Soon the galaxy would learn that humanity had returned. But by then, it would be too late for them to do anything about it. In the vast shipyards around New Horizon Station, the final preparations were being made. Weapons that could destroy planets were loaded onto ships that could not be detected. Soldiers who had never known mercy prepared for a war that would reshape the galaxy. 25 years ago, the Galactic Council had betrayed and murdered humanity to preserve their stability. Now humanity was coming back to collect the debt, and they intended to collect it with interest. Admiral Lisa Park stood on the bridge of the stealth dreadnought Vengeance, watching as her fleet materialized from dark space like nightmares stepping into reality. Around her, 50 warships appeared on the edge of the Veltari system, their black hulls invisible to every scanner the aliens possessed. "All ships report ready," Commander Torres announced from the tactical station. "Enemy fleet composition confirms intelligence reports. 12 heavy cruisers, 30 destroyers, and a command battleship." Lisa studied the tactical display. The Veltarian home fleet was spread across the system in a peaceful formation, their crews probably going about routine duties. None of them suspected that death was watching them from the darkness. "Are the message pods ready?" Lisa asked. "Yes, Admiral. Programmed with your mother's final transmission and the historical records of the betrayal. They'll broadcast on all frequencies. Once we begin the attack." Lisa nodded. The galaxy needed to understand what was happening to them and why. This was not random violence. This was justice, 25 years in the making. "Begin the assault," she ordered. The human fleet struck without warning. Advanced plasma weapons, developed in the long years of exile, reached out across space to touch the alien ships. But these were not the crude weapons the galaxy remembered. These beams did not simply destroy their targets. The Veltarian heavy cruiser, Glorious Dawn, was the first to die. The human weapon struck its hull and began working at the molecular level, dismantling the ship's structure atom by atom. The crew had time to realize what was happening, time to send desperate distress calls, time to understand that their ship was simply ceasing to exist around them. "Veltarian command ship is trying to retreat," Torres reported. "Let them," Lisa replied coldly. "I want them to carry the message." Across the system, the Veltarian fleet died in terror and confusion. Their weapons could not lock onto the human ships. Their shields offered no protection against weapons that worked on the fundamental forces of matter itself. One by one, their proud vessels dissolved into clouds of scattered atoms. On the bridge of the Veltarian flagship Strength of Generations, Admiral Korthvel watched his fleet disappear with growing horror. His tactical officer was screaming readings that made no sense. Ships were simply vanishing from sensors, leaving nothing behind but empty space. "Who is attacking us?" Korthvel demanded. "Unknown contacts, sir," the tactical officer replied, with a shaking voice. Their technology is beyond anything in our databases. They're invisible to our scanners even when they're firing. A communication request appeared on Korth Vel's screen. He accepted it, expecting to see the face of some unknown enemy. Instead, he found himself looking at a human woman with cold, dark eyes. "I am Admiral Lisa Park of the Human Expeditionary Fleet," the woman said. "You are looking at ghosts, Admiral. The ghosts of a species your people murdered 25 years ago." Korth Vel felt his blood freeze. "Impossible. Humans are extinct. We saw your worlds burn." "You saw some of our worlds burn," Lisa corrected. "But humanity is harder to kill than you thought. We survived in the darkness, and we've been waiting for this moment." Around them, the last Veltarian ships were dissolving under human weapons fire. Korth Vel watched his destroyers, Braveheart and Swift Justice, simply cease to exist there, crews dying without even understanding what had killed them. "What do you want?" Korth Vel asked. Lisa's expression never changed. "We want what you took from us. Our friends, our families, our children, our trust, our belief that the galaxy could be a place of peace and cooperation. Since we can't have those things back, we'll settle for your lives." The transmission ended. Korth Vel turned to his navigation officer. "Emergency jump! Get us out of here!" "I can't, sir," the officer replied. "They're jamming our hyperspace systems. We're trapped." But Lisa had other plans. As the Veltarian flagship prepared to die with the rest of its fleet, the jamming field suddenly disappeared. "They're letting us go, Admiral," the navigation officer reported with confusion. "Jump!" Korth Vel ordered. "Full speed to Veltari Prime." The flagship vanished into hyperspace, carrying news of humanity's return to the Veltarian homeworld. Behind them, the human fleet finished destroying the last few patrol ships and then disappeared back into the darkness. News of the attack spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The impossible had happened. Humanity, extinct for 25 years, had returned with weapons and technology beyond anything the Galactic Council possessed. On Korthak Prime, General Thekmor read the reports with growing unease. The descriptions of human capabilities seemed like fantasy. Ships that could not be detected, weapons that dissolved matter at the molecular level. But the evidence was undeniable. "Send word to all fleet commanders," Thekmor ordered. "Full alert status. If the humans have truly returned, we must be ready." But being ready proved impossible. Over the next weeks, human ships appeared throughout the galaxy like malevolent spirits. They struck without warning, destroyed their targets completely, and vanished before any response could be organized. The Korthak mining station at Zerion Prime simply stopped responding to communications one day. When a patrol ship arrived to investigate, they found nothing but empty space where the station had been. No debris, no distress signals, no trace that millions of Korthaks had ever lived and worked there. The Meridian Trade Fleet Prosperity Wing was traveling between systems when they encountered human ships. The lead freighter managed to transmit a brief message before the transmission cut off. "They're here. The humans are real. They're killing everything. Tell my family I—" Silence followed. On the Zelix colony world of New Garden, the entire planetary defense fleet vanished overnight. The population woke to find their orbital protectors gone, leaving them naked and defenseless. But the humans did not attack the planet itself. They left it unharmed but unprotected, a message that could not be misunderstood. You celebrated our destruction. Now you get to live without our protection. The psychological effect was devastating. Across the galaxy, species that had lived in peace for decades suddenly found themselves looking over their shoulders, wondering when the human ghosts would appear. Trade routes emptied as merchants refused to travel through space that might hold invisible predators. Military fleets huddled around their homeworlds, afraid to venture into open space. High Counselor Veltar, now elderly and living in retirement, received an emergency communication from the current council leadership. The young Veltarian on the screen looked terrified. "Honored Veltar," the counselor said, "we need your wisdom. The humans have returned, and our fleets cannot fight what they cannot see. What do we do?" Veltar stared at the screen for a long moment. He had always known this day might come. Deep in his heart, he had never quite believed that all humans had died in the Purge. They were too clever, too resourceful, too stubborn to be completely eliminated. "How many have we lost?" he asked. 17 military installations destroyed, 8 fleet groups annihilated, countless civilian casualties, and they're just getting started. Veltar closed his eyes. In his memoirs, he had written about the difficult but necessary decision to eliminate humanity. He had convinced himself that it was the right choice, that the galaxy was better off without human influence. Now he was about to learn the price of that decision. "Send a message to all species," Veltar said finally. "Tell them to prepare for war. Not the kind of war we've fought against each other, but something far worse. The humans are not trying to conquer us. They're trying to punish us. What's the difference?" Veltar looked at the memorial statue visible through his window, a bronze monument celebrating humanity's extinction. Soon that statue would be nothing but melted metal. "Conquerors want to rule their enemies," he explained. "They need them, alive to serve their purposes. But humans don't want to rule us anymore. They want us to suffer as they suffered. They want us to feel the terror and helplessness they felt when we betrayed them." The young counselor's face grew pale. "How do we fight an enemy like that?" "I don't know," Veltar admitted. "I don't think we can." As if summoned by his words, new alarms began sounding throughout the station. Through his window, Veltar could see the defense fleet scrambling to respond to some new threat. But he already knew it was too late. Humanity had returned to claim their revenge, and they were just getting started. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened on Nexus Prime as human ships materialized in orbit around the capital world. For the first time in 25 years, every species in the galaxy was united in fear. Through the great viewing windows of the council chamber, they could see the human fleet hanging in space like dark angels of judgment. High Counselor Veltar, called out of retirement for this final crisis, stood before the assembled representatives. His once proud bearing was now bent with age and the weight of what he had done. Around him sat the leaders of 17 different species, all looking to him for answers he did not have. "Honored delegates," Veltar began, his voice carrying across the silent chamber. "We face a reckoning that I brought upon us all. 25 years ago, I convinced you that humanity posed a threat to galactic stability. I was wrong." Murmurs of confusion and fear rippled through the assembly. The Korthak representative, General Morthek, stood to speak. "You said humanity was becoming too powerful?" Morthek accused. "You said they would dominate us all if we didn't act first." "I said many things," Veltar replied. "I believed them at the time. But I was a fool who mistook strength for tyranny, leadership for oppression. Humanity never sought to conquer us. They only wanted to help us become better than we were." The Meridian delegate, a sleek figure in flowing robes, gestured toward the viewing windows. "Help us become better? They're destroying everything. My homeworld's defense fleet was annihilated 3 days ago. They left no survivors." "Because we left them no choice," Veltar said. "We betrayed them completely. We turned their trust into a weapon against them. We murdered their children, destroyed their worlds, and then celebrated our crime. What did we expect them to become after that?" A new voice cut through the debate. The chamber's communication system activated, and Admiral Lisa Park's face appeared on the main screen. She looked exactly like her mother had in those final moments 25 years ago, but where Sarah Chen had shown shock and betrayal, Lisa Park showed only cold determination. Delegates of the Galactic Council, Lisa spoke with calm authority, you are looking at the consequences of your choices. For 25 years, you have lived in a galaxy shaped by our absence. Wars that we would have prevented, suffering we would have ended, deaths we would have stopped. You chose this chaos. When you chose to murder us, Veltar stepped forward. Admiral Park, I remember your mother. She was a good woman, a brave officer. What happened to her was wrong. What happened to her was genocide, Lisa corrected. What happened to her was the systematic extermination of my entire species by people we called friends. People we died to protect. The Zelix representative, a tall insectoid creature, spoke up. Admiral, many of us regret what happened, but that was a different time, different leaders. Surely we can find a peaceful solution. Lisa's expression never changed. Peaceful? You mean like the peace you offered my mother when you opened fire on her ship? Like the peace you showed the children of Earth when you burned our cities? She activated a holographic display that filled the chamber. Images appeared of human cities in flames, human ships breaking apart under alien weapons, human families running in terror as their protectors revealed themselves as murderers. This is what your peace looked like, Lisa continued. Billions of innocent people dying because you decided we were inconvenient, and when it was over, you built monuments to celebrate what you had done. The images changed to show the memorial statues and museums that commemorated humanity's extinction. The assembled delegates looked away in shame as they saw their own. World celebrations of genocide displayed before them. General Morthek tried to speak. You thought we were becoming too powerful, Lisa interrupted. So you eliminated us before we could threaten your comfortable mediocrity. Well, congratulations. You got exactly what you wanted. A galaxy without human interference. She gestured toward another display showing the conflicts that had torn the galaxy apart in humanity's absence. Wars between former allies. Extinct species that humans might have saved. Suffering that could have been prevented. How do you like it? Lisa asked. The chamber fell silent. Several delegates were openly weeping as they looked at the destruction their choice had brought. The galaxy they had tried to preserve by murdering humanity had become a worse place in every possible way. What do you want from us? Veltar asked finally. I want you to understand, Lisa replied. For 25 years, we have lived in exile, carrying the pain of your betrayal. We have watched from the darkness as you celebrated our extinction. We have seen our children grow up without hope, without trust, without the belief that the galaxy could ever be a place of peace. She paused, her cold eyes scanning the assembled delegates. You taught us that mercy is weakness. You showed us that trust is foolish. You demonstrated that the only law in this galaxy is strength. We have learned your lessons well. The human fleet in orbit began to move. Through the viewing windows, the delegates could see the warships taking position around Nexus Prime. There would be no escape this time. Please, the Zelix delegate begged. There must be another way. Not all of us supported the decision to attack humanity. Some of us voted against it. Lisa's expression shifted slightly, the first sign of emotion she had shown. You voted against it? Veltar activated his personal records, displaying the vote from 25 years ago. The results appeared on the main screen. 14 species voted for humanity's extinction, but 3 had voted against it. The Zelix, the Karathi, and the Benthans opposed the action, Veltar confirmed. They argued that humanity should be given a chance to address the Council's concerns peacefully. Lisa studied the voting record in silence. Around her, her fleet waited for orders. The assembled delegates held their breath, wondering if this revelation might change anything. Finally, Lisa spoke. 3 species tried to save us, 3 out of 17. Where were they when the attack began? Why didn't they warn us? We were overruled, the Zelix delegate replied desperately. The majority vote bound us all to participate. We had no choice. There is always a choice, Lisa said. You could have refused. You could have fought against it. You could have died with honor rather than live with shame. Instead, you chose to be complicit in genocide. She turned her attention back to Veltar. You want to know what we want? We want justice. We want every species that participated in our extinction to understand what it feels like to be helpless, to be betrayed, to watch everything you love burn while your friends smile and call it necessary. The human weapons charged. Energy readings spiked across the human fleet as planet-killing weapons prepared to fire. But instead of immediate destruction, Lisa made one final announcement. However, she continued, we are not you. We remember what we used to be before you forced us to become something else. We remember mercy, even if you taught us to see it as weakness. She activated another display showing 3 sectors of space, marked in green. The species that voted against our extinction will be spared. Their worlds will be protected. They will become the foundation of whatever comes next in this galaxy. Relief flooded the faces of the Zelix, Korathi, and Benthan delegates. But the others realized what this meant for them. As for the rest of you, Lisa said, you will face the same choice you gave us, death or exile. You have 1 hour to evacuate Nexus Prime before we reduce it to atoms. Your species will be allowed to flee to the Galactic Rim, where you can build new civilizations free from our influence. And if we refuse? General Morthek asked. Lisa's answer was simple. Then you die here today, just like our children died on Earth. The session dissolved into chaos as delegates began frantically contacting their homeworlds. Some argued for resistance, others for immediate evacuation. But all of them understood that humanity had become something beyond their ability to fight. As the hour passed, ships began launching from Nexus Prime. Some species chose exile over extinction, loading their populations onto vast colony ships and heading for the empty spaces beyond the galaxy's edge. Others chose to make a final stand on their homeworlds. Those who fought died quickly and completely, their worlds reduced to lifeless rocks by weapons that worked at the quantum level. Those who chose exile were allowed to leave, but warned never to return. In the end, 14 species vanished from the galaxy they had once ruled. 3 remained, protected by humanity's promise to those who had tried to do the right thing. Admiral Lisa Park stood on the observation deck of her flagship, looking down at the ruins of Nexus Prime. The great council chamber where humanity's death warrant had been signed was now just scattered debris floating in space. Admiral, her aide reported, the evacuation fleets have reached the Galactic Rim. Long-range sensors confirm they're establishing colonies in the void between galaxies. Good, Lisa replied. Let them build their civilizations in the darkness. Let them remember that they chose exile over justice, just as we once did. She thought about her mother, about Captain Sarah Chen's final words asking Earth to remember them. They had been remembered, and they had been avenged. But as Lisa looked out at the galaxy her people now controlled, she